Hello and welcome to the Berkcast, the How to Train a Dragon podcast. I'm your host HC, and with me is
Wolf.
And today we are going to ask a question that every environmentalist probably asks in his life: Is How to Train a Dragon messing with nature? So, in order to answer that question, I think we first of all need to establish what nature is in this franchise. So, Wolf, what would you classify as nature in the How to Train a Dragon universe?
Well, nature is. I was going to have a joke there, but I don't have a joke, so failure. Professional podcast,
Well,
ladies and gentlemen.
before you go on, I would just like to remind the audience that bad jokes like mine are better than trying to have a joke and failing at telling them like Wolf.
No.
There you go.
No.
Yes.
Anyways, I would say, right, that nature is very much. I mean, since this is like. Considering how the show and the movies set up the dragons to feel like. I've said in the past, right, like. In the world of How to Train Your Dragon, dragons are as common as a bird, right? Like in our world, you can walk out into your backyard and potentially see a bird flying around or a bird in your backyard, stuff like that, right? In their world, they can walk out into their backyard and see a dragon. Like that's that common for them. So I would definitely, in the world of How to Train Your Dragon, I would say the dragons are a part of nature. They do provide, something to nature. They have a benefit to nature and the area around them, the dragons around them, and the other creatures around them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say messing with the dragons is messing with nature, and even messing with different islands or dragon habitats, stuff like that. Again, it's messing with nature.
Well,
And
interesting.
if you want a general response, nature is any plant or animal ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, like you said, basically the dragons themselves are kind of a sign of nature, and but then there's also the thing of like how much would you say they mess with it? And well, I think the entire idea of the franchise, honestly, is kind of sort of messing with nature because what happens with the one thing that sets this entire story in motion is Hiccup encountering a wounded Toothless, and then instead of killing him, setting him free. That's already kind of messing with the Viking nature on Berk, because on Berk it's like, well, dragons are dangerous. We need to kill them. That's already one nature that's out the window. And but then there's also the entire thing of, when you really think about it, Toothless is kind of a cyborg because his tail fin gets injured, is no longer there. Hiccup took it down.
He's not a cyborg,
As
he's just an amputee.
mm, well, cyborg sounds cooler. So, but the point is that half of his tail, whether Hiccup has to control the tail or Tukas can control the tail on his own. The It's still mechanic. It's still something. So in a sense, the entire like Toothless himself is kind of a violation of a messing with nature kind of deal, because he can't rely on his nature anymore because he lost half the tail. So he has to rely on a mechanical help in order to get the tail going again.
I wouldn't say it's a violation of nature, though.
Not violation, but it is kind of messing with it.
I would say it's like shooting Toothless down is messing with nature, absolutely. Fixing his tail fin to where he can fly on his own, I would say is more so helping nature, is putting nature back in balance.
Yeah, true, but
Like
at the
keeping
same
Toothless
time,
as a pet and not letting him free is actually helping nature and putting nature back into balance. Unless the Night Furies are the will just eat so much fish that they'll eat all of the other dragons out of house and home, so it's actually beneficial for the unless again basically saying the Night Furies are an invasive species. If that's the case, then Hiccup's actually screwed nature by
yeah, but
unleashing Toothless on the hidden world.
one way to look at it. But the one thing I'll counter you at is that yeah, you say that fixing the tail kind of puts nature back in balance, and something. I would have agreed with you if the other tail fin would have just been injured, not outright taken down.
I mean,
Because then you
Flipper,
could,
right?
because then you
What's
could
that?
let it heal.
What's that movie
But
where they basically make a fake fin for the dolphin?
there's a movie like that. I don't.
Yes, they make a fake fin for the dolphin so the dolphin can go back out into the wild. There's a movie of that. I forget what it's called. Is it Flipper? I don't think it's Flipper.
I have no clue, honestly.
That's a movie that exists. I'm sure of it. It's not a fever dream. I'm not crazy.
You said so. You said so. You said so. I'll take your word for it. If anybody watching this can tell us what that movie is, let us know. But another thing I kinda want to point out regarding Dolphin Tales.
I think that's it. I'm looking through.
Mm-hmm. You know something? I never heard of this movie, but I heard there's a sequel.
Yeah, it's not a fin. They make a tail for the dolphin.
Okay, fair enough. It's almost the same thing.
It's literally the same as Toothless. It's Toothless, but in aquatic form.
Yeah, but in Dolphin, how to train your dolphin.
And I think Dolphin Tale's a really terrible movie too. But anyways, I don't know. I've not seen it. I've just seen like bits and pieces, and I just know that's a thing that exists. Point being, I don't think it's messing with nature. I don't think it's I guess you could argue it's a subversion of nature, but again, like you're giving that creature that was injured a chance at being back in the wild again and still being able to function more or less normally. So
okay, fair enough.
I would say you're helping nature in that regard. Now, granted, in Toothless's case, eventually that tail fin's going to stop working, so he's going to be flying and then just fall out of the sky. Or, he's going to be, in a fight trying to defend his family and get killed because, his tail fin stops working. Way to go, Hiccup. Couldn't make a tail fin that didn't have any issues. Jeez. So in that case, Hiccup screwed Toothless and possibly Toothless's family.
That's one way to look at it, but yeah, kind of. But the one thing I will ask, you did say something which is interesting about the dragons living with humans is basically kind of messing with nature. So, would you say anything from like the supposed utopia that Hiccup wanted to create and kind of did create at the beginning of the Hidden World? Would say that's messing with nature, because I think the movie kind of tries to imply in a sense that it does kind
of. I would say it is. I think I would agree with the movie part and say that it is.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. No, you're not.
I'm good.
Fine. Jeez, HC.
I'm good.
But I would agree with the movie and say that it is messing with nature somewhat, because technically you're taking all of those dragons, like, granted you're rescuing them from dragon trappers, I get that, but you're still taking them out of their their original habitat, their original place of living, right?
Yeah, and you also kind of
actually, we talked about the deleted scenes. That deleted scene where we don't see Hiccup rescuing is it the Crimson Gore Gutter?
Yeah, the alternate opening.
The alternate opening where he's actually where he's rescue. I don't want to say rescuing, but he's trying to train that dragon and get it to follow him back to Berk off of that island. I guess because it's alone or something like that. Like, I think that is very much Hiccup messing with nature. Like,
Yeah, and we also, speaking of the deleted scenes, we also talked about it in the scene where Valka tells Hiccup the difference between between a rider and a cat, and between an owner and the hunter is not that big. And like, there's also the symbolic shot of Hiccup looking at Toothless through the door, and it looks like a cage. So,
like, there's definitely a lot there in the deleted scenes that show that. I think that really show that they were going heavy on the owning an animal isn't necessarily, or owning a dragon isn't that different from trapping a dragon, right? And enslaving a dragon, I guess you'd say. Like there's a very fine line there between what is and isn't acceptable and not acceptable, and how wild an animal should be allowed to be and how wild it shouldn't be allowed to be. Stuff like that. Like it's some interesting stuff there. When you look at the deleted scenes.
And the final movie does also kind of touch about it upon it, but very briefly. Like when we see Hiccup and Astrid actually arriving at the hidden world, and they see Toothless rule over the dragons and everything, and then there's this the type of dragon that Skullcrusher is, that it sees them, and Hiccup tries to do the hunting, and it doesn't work because all of the dragons in the hidden world are wild. They don't have owners. They don't have. And Dean also kind of talked about it, that the reason we see Dragos Bewilderbeast there is to show us that even a dragon who's done bad things can be reformed in the hidden world, which means he kind of broke free of these humans, out of this humans' control. So in a sense, the hidden world is kind of like the perfect place to reserve nature in this universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that and get it.
So any other examples you've seen of reserving nature or messing with nature? Because I have a few from the show.
Yeah, but like talking about the show, Race to the Edge has the really big thing with the I'm gonna forget the name of the dragon type, the manta ray dragon, the electric one. What is that thing's name? God.
I don't remember the sea shockers, maybe.
Yes, sea shocker. That's it. It also manta ray dragon actually comes up, sea shocker dragon. So it's the first thing. Way to go, Google! You got one right. Yeah, sea shocker dragon is it. Like the episode they have with that and fish legs, and them trapping it in the bay, and like there's a big episode on that.
Yeah, because that I think we talked about it. This is the first time we actually know about, except for the Red Dead in the first movie, that dragons are actually capable of eating other dragons. One's the hunter, one's the prey.
Yeah.
And the fact that the riders are going out of their way to prevent the hunter from getting to the prey is kind of messing with nature.
Well, also they trapped the sea shocker in that bay as well, right? So like, they made it more easy to get at and to kill, right? Like they basically technically made their own kind of zoo, if you will, in a way.
That also kind of applies to the squirrel, which is a trap in Defenders, where they trap it in the icy caves, and then in Race to the Edge it wants revenge, and then they say, you know what, no, we are not going to trap it again, we're going to let it be free.
And that's when we learn that the squirrel is actually an invasive species, and it eats all the fish and all the other dragons out of food, and so then it kills off a ton of different other dragon species. So they messed with nature in that way too by not trapping the squirrel again. Way to go.
It always comes back to eating people with you.
I didn't say eating people, I said eating fish. Eating
something.
Fish are not people. That's right, I said it. Fish aren't people. Come at me, fish. What are you going to do? Come on land? You can't, because you can't breathe. That's right. Ha. I went there.
Yeah.
You can't get to me. I have to come to you in order for you to get me, and I'm not as stupid as Steve Irwin was.
I just wrote an apology to all the fish population.
Rip Steve Irwin. Crocodile Hunter, you will be missed.
Basically, and
I have fun on the show, at least.
I would just like to give the listeners some context that before we started, Wolf said that doing this show with me is the most painful thing he is going through at the moment.
That's why I have to. That's why I have to make That's why I have to make jokes like that, because it's the only way I can have fun.
I question some of this, but whatever.
Moving on. Into our
Yeah,
actual
moving
topic.
on. Yeah, for the actual topic again. Another example, I think I want to hear what you have to say about that one. In the show that's introduced is the idea of the dragon root. That that's nature, but at the same time, it kind of fucks up with the it kind of messes up with the dragons.
So
What do you think about this?
I think, did I talk about my personal headcanon with the dragon root on here before?
You brought this up at one point, but remind the
All right,
people.
so I like before Race to the Edge came along and showed that the dragon root could be grown. My
Yeah.
big thing for the dragon root was this, like, we found, back in, I think it was Defenders of Berk, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So they found the
The
dragon
first time
root.
the first time we saw it was the yes.
So like they found the dragon root in Mildew's garden, right? And to me, before Race to the Edge came along, my mind went to, okay, like I didn't see nothing with Mildew involved in that. My entire thinking was that the dragon root is, in a way, has a symbiotic relationship with dragons, right? In that the dragon root can't necessarily grow naturally, that a dragon has to eat it, and then when said dragon dies, that's when the dragon root can grow, because the seed from the dragon root or what have you stays with the dragon even after they eat it. Like they're never able to get rid of it. And so when
Mm-hmm.
when a dragon finally dies, the dragon root basically, I guess you'd say, you know, absorbs nutrients from the dead dragon's body to grow into a new dragon root and then repeat the cycle, right? That was my thing. That's why, like, the dragon root basically gave off this, I guess you'd say scent that made dragons want to eat it, right? And that they were willing to fight
Mm-hmm.
over it, right? Because the dragon root in order to grow, the dragon root technically needs dead dragons around it. So, if dragons kill each other, then that means the dragon root can grow fighting over the dragon root and they both die, or whatever dragons are fighting over the dragon root die, then that means the dragon root gets to grow that much larger and that much bigger and produce that much more, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in my head, that was my head canon for the dragon root and what made sense, right? And that's why
Okay.
I liked the idea of the dragon root so much. When they revealed that the dragon root could just be grown naturally with a little bit of sunlight and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of, it ruins the headcanon, I guess you would say. But two, I guess I'm biased because it's my headcanon, so I'm definitely biased. But I kind of like my headcanon more than what Race to the Edge revealed with the dragon root. And looking at the way Race to the Edge reveals the dragon root, right? That it can be grown, that it's mostly used as a poison to mess with the dragon's heads
Mm-hmm.
is, I would say, in my opinion, yeah, that's definitely messing with nature in a way. Now, granted, right, like, is that that's what humans, right? That's what trappers have. That's what trappers and dragon hunters have used the dragon root for. We still don't necessarily know what the dragon root's natural purpose might be. Maybe the dragon root's natural purpose could very well still be what I said it is. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Or what I headcanon it
Okay.
is.
Yeah, and I actually, before we started this episode, I want to do some research about the dragon vine from the graphic novels, which is kind of like the dragon root, but honestly,
Now, the dragon vine could very well be like an invasive species type thing, right? Like an invasive species of plant, because
yeah, I think that's what they were trying to imply.
Yeah, that it's
actually,
like, the dragon root invades that island and starts to grow and just gets everywhere, and there's no way to really stop it other than with I think it's the silk spanners is their name.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, granted, we don't really know a ton about the dragon vine, like what is, like other than the silk spanners eating the dragon vine. And it seems that, it doesn't take many silk spanners to basically eat a ton of dragon vine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of...
Yeah. But at the same time, you can kind of argue that this is nature. That there's there's one species that can devour this. Why not? But it's like when it's like in the real world where a snake is dangerous to most animals, but then there's one animal that can actually kill a snake.
Well, snakes kill snakes, technically. Some of them, anyways.
Well, I mean an animal other than a snake. You know what I mean?
Also a hawk,
Uh,
a bird.
yeah.
Yeah, I get that, right?
Mm.
And I'm trying to think of, is there any real world example of plants that are inherently just like they don't add any function? Like I'm like the dragon vine, as far as we're aware, right? Like it doesn't do anything for the land that it grows on. It doesn't benefit anything. It's there just to be an invasive species that apparently kills anything that it wraps up in and stuff like that. How exactly, I don't remember. I'd have to look back through the book a
Yeah.
little bit, but like I'm trying to think if there's a real world example of plants that are basically just not good. Like they don't provide any benefit and they're just bad. And so they're
Those
just there to, or they're
those
just there to be eaten by another thing. Actually, I think eucalyptus is, if I'm not mistaken, like koalas eat eucalyptus and they're like the only thing that can eat eucalyptus. And there's not a
Mhm.
ton of natural things you can do with eucalyptus. Man-made stuff I think there is, but natural stuff you can do with eucalyptus is very bare minimum. And so koalas are the only thing that can actually eat eucalyptus. If you're in Australia and you live in Australia and you know a lot more about it, or you know a lot more about plants and animals, let us know in the comments below, because I don't. So take everything
Yeah.
I say with a grain of salt. These are very much
Like everything you say is kind of new to me. So I'm assume until proven otherwise, I assume you're right.
spurious facts with Wolf. Always fact check behind me, because I might be very wrong.
Yeah. Well, so another case of nature that we see in the franchise actually comes from Gift of the Night Fury, where where the point of Gift of the Night Fury is that we find out that every year during Snuggletug the dragons are going away to an island which is later dubbed Dragon Island in order to lay their eggs.
I thought it was
So
dubbed the Egg Hatchery. It doesn't matter. It's they go there to lay the eggs.
actually, you know what? Dragon Island might be the Red Death's Nest. I might be confusing this. The point is, they go to an island to
Lay
hatch their
eggs.
eggs.
Yes.
So, while this is happening in Gift of the Night Fury, what is Fishleg's first act once the dragons start living? He traps Meatlug at home. He keeps her at home. Then she lays the eggs at home on Berk, and we all know what that leads to. But in a sense, you can say that him locking her there is kind of messing with nature, because it prevents her from going with the rest of the dragons to where she's supposed to lay her eggs.
There's a counter argument to that, though. Is it preventing nature? Because Meatlug is still able to lay eggs, and those eggs are still able to hatch into baby dragons. So exactly in what way was nature prevented?
It's not necessarily prevented, but it is kind of.
In what way was nature messed with, though? Because that dragon is still able to do everything it would normally be able to do. It's just not doing it on the specified island, right? I think that's one of the problems, right? Like with the third film, like it has this message of messing with nature and messing with the natural order of things, and yet you look back and it doesn't quite line up with what they've shown in the past. Like Gift of Night Fury is a great example, right? In so much as that, again, you have this idea that, hey, fish legs basically interfered with nature and stopped Meatlug from going to the egg hatchery, but Meatlug didn't really need to go to the egg hatchery. She still laid her eggs just fine, and they still hatched just fine, no problems. I mean, they affected Berk, sure. Berk had problems, but that's solely the fault of mostly Astrid, partially fish legs in the first place, but mostly Astrid.
Okay.
But still, yeah, like nature wasn't affected by the eggs. I guess, right? You could say that the egg hatchery is the way it is because, right, like they go there to lay eggs because there's no forest there to burn down. There's nothing there, like, because the eggs explode. Like, there's nothing there to burn down or destroy nature-wise, right? Like, trees or stuff like that. In Berk, if they laid eggs on Berk and they exploded, probably a lot more forest fires, I'm sure.
Yeah, most likely. Actually, thinking about this now, this is something that's like completely on top of my head as we're talking about this. Like we talked about how the main theme of the movie is letting go. I'm not saying it's not, but there really is more focus on the entire thing of nature and how nature is supposed to be in the third film. And one of the things that I kind of realized, that we also talked about how Grimmel is kind of an evil mirror version of Hiccup, is that yeah, Hiccup kind of prevents nature by keeping Toothless, the alpha dragon, with him, and kind of using him to build this utopia. But at the end of the day, he kind of realizes it's not necessarily the right thing, and he lets him go.
I mean,
And
it's this. Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish first.
and then Grimmel is also doing the same thing, but a bit more extreme, because you could make the argument that Toothless makes a conscious decision to stay with Hiccup because they're best buds and everything, but Grimmel actually uses little mind control. There's no way around this one. This is mind control. What we're talking about here. He uses that serum from the are they called dead grippers? His dragons.
Yes, maybe. I don't know. I'll look it up real quick.
Okay, but basically he uses their serum to mind control them, and also the Light Fury in the climax of the film.
Yeah, they're death grippers.
Okay, so he uses the serum of the dead grippers in order to mind control them and the Light Fury, and he outright says that not even the Alpha can control them with this serum. So this is literally finding a solution that goes against nature, because we, after Toothless becomes Alpha, if you look into the Gothic novels and see a bit of the stuff in the third film, you know that even without the Bewilder Beast's supposed mind control for the sake of the convenience, every dragon still listens to Toothless once he rolls. Like the dragons can kind of sense that he's the Alpha. They have a way of telling he's the Alpha, and they should follow him and honor him and everything. The dragons like have a way to know this is their leader and this is the one dragon they should follow. So when you make when you create a serum that kind of neglects that, and they don't listen to the Alpha no matter what, then this is kind of messing with nature, if you ask me.
All right. I think you hit on something there that's really good, but I think you also missed something that's fairly obvious, and that I would say is fairly obvious, and that I think is the bigger point, right? I think it's fair to say that, Grimmel is a poacher, right? Like, he hunts the dragons for sport and no other reason, really. Like, that's his goal, is to hunt the dragons for sport because he enjoys the thrill of the hunt and the kill and all of that. And that, just shows that the movie's definitely trying to set Grimmel up as a poacher. That's the way he interferes with nature. But I think also, like, the entire idea that, Hiccup's creating this utopia, I think is more so Hiccup's creating a zoo of different dragon species and all, and all of that, right? Like, he might have good intentions, but at the same time, there are definitely, like, it depends on who you talk to, most assuredly, but there's definitely some questions surrounding zoos now in the real world that, we do have, that are still lingering, that are issues that people do bring up and want to talk about. And, we definitely should talk about to some degree, at least anyways. Not going to have that talk here, obviously, because woefully underqualified. But I think,
this could also be a topic for a future episode.
But I do think, sure. But I do think something that the movie is trying to set up is that Hiccup is absolutely messing with nature in a way of, by keeping the dragons all on Berk, or by trying to keep the dragons around. Right? He is messing with nature. He is interfering. He does have good intentions, but I think the movie's goal is to show that, hey, good intentions can still lead to, bad outcomes.
There's actually the line he says to Toothless when they're about to say their goodbye. He tells them, "I was so busy fighting for the world I wanted, I didn't realize what you needed."
Mm-hmm.
This kind of,
and it really sells what I think the movie's trying to go for. There is the interfering with nature thing. The path to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say.
Yep.
But,
so so yeah, even though we mentioned the show mostly regarding this, I think Hidden World is like the point where people can actually see that there is some sort of interfering with nature here to an extent, to some extent, and actually to a greater extent. You could argue the movie is about that. Honestly,
here's another example to bring up: Scaldi. How does that fit in? Is that technically interfering with nature? Because he was being attacked by predators, right? If I'm not mistaken. Like it's not something.
Wait, do you mean Scaldi, like the Scaldron that Ruffnut helps?
Yeah, Scaldi, the one that Ruffnut calls Scaldi, and that they all help and get back into the water and fix its fin and all that. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, that episode, Scaldi was attacked by other dragons first, right?
That was Defenders, so it was pretty long ago, but I think so.
Because so, if I'm not mistaken, they scared off the other predator dragons from the Scaldron, from Scaldi. And so technically that would be interfering with nature.
Yeah.
Like, sure, we can sit back and say, oh, well, we kept this animal from dying, or we kept this dragon from dying, but still yet, you interfered with nature in a way.
That's another thing, because they, in the show, like one time in Riders, one time there's, in Riders and Defenders, what was the Typhoonrang's name? I forgot.
Oh, gosh. You're making me remember stuff that is way, way too far back. Typhoonrang, what was his name? It's on the tip of my tongue.
Torch, maybe?
Torch, that was it.
Okay, so there was him, but I don't think, like, they just helped the little baby dragon, and then he kind of grew up away from them. Same with Golf. It's almost to the edge. So would you say that's interfering with nature? Because I don't think necessarily. Yeah, maybe with Golf more because we actually saw him, being born and away from his mother. And we but at the same time, they kind of brought him back to where he's supposed to be. So you could argue it's kind of like helping a bird get through an injury and then sending it back to the wild.
Again, I guess it depends on how you look at things and how you see things, like, and kind of where your stance is, right? Some people are going to say interfering at all, ever, even if you're technically helping, is like interfering at all with something that happened naturally, right? Some people will say, like, if an animal is hurt naturally, not by something man-made, like if an animal is hurt by a bear trap and you help heal it and send it back out to the wild, that's a different story to most people. Or if animals are like, hurt by an oil spill and people go in to help those animals and then send them back out in the wild, that's a different story to some people. But some people say, like, if that animal is hurt naturally and you mess with it or disturb it, even if you're helping it, some people say you've interfered with nature. Personally, I would say if you're helping the animal, then you're doing a good. But there is an argument to be made there, I suppose.
Yeah, it's not so black and white.
Again, I want to sit here and say that it is, and I feel that it is, but that's just my personal opinion, and it's very much,
No, what I meant with the black and what I meant with black and white is that just saying you're interfering with nature doesn't necessarily mean you're a good or a bad person. It can go both ways.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on with this, the one thing I do want to ask you regarding messing with nature, this is from Race to the Edge again, Vanaheim. I think regarding what we know about Vanaheim, then that yes, this is indeed messing with nature.
What do you mean? Like, how is it messing with nature?
Well, the thing is that Vanaheim is the dragon graveyard, right?
Yeah.
And according to what Mala tells, no human actually set foot there and came back. So, the fact that the writers go there at all and kind of find out what the weakness of the dragons protecting that place is, and the fact that they keep going back there every few episodes, this is kind of like,
Well, they only go back there twice. They only go back there twice.
Well, still, my train of thought says that once you're out of a place like this, you just, you stay out.
Oh, sure.
Especially. Sure. So, I don't know, the fact that, there's kind of a rule here, and Mala also says that Vanaheim is sort of banned for humans. So again, I guess you could say that this is again how you interpret it. But the fact that games are coming back there more than once, and the fact that they learn what the dragon's weakness is, that it's actually blind, and they need to cheat his other senses, not his sight. That's interesting, and that's an interesting episode and all. But when you really think about it, that's really messing with nature, and also. Yeah, that's what I think. What do you think?
I mean, the act of going there, though, like the act of, I guess you could say, yeah, it's technically messing with nature because it's it's going somewhere where humans shouldn't go. But again, the show never shows it as humans going there like ruins it in some way, shape, or form. Everything still acts as normal after they leave. Nothing changes after they've been there. Like, they don't hurt anything. Nothing changes. They're able to they're able to go there peacefully and like not interfere with anything, like the atmosphere or the local flora or the local fauna or just the dragons indoor. Like, nothing's wrong with them necessarily being there or or having been there, right? So technically it's not really them interfering with nature at all. Now, absolutely, you could argue like them going there in the first place is interfering with nature, or at least messing with it in some way, shape, or form, possibly. Like, you could definitely argue that, and I don't think you'd necessarily be wrong, but I don't think the show goes far enough to say like, hey, humans being here actively hurts this place, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, the show doesn't necessarily show that.
But I still think that them going there in the first place, even if it was one episode, was kind of like, yeah, you know what? There's some violation of rules here.
Sure, I get what you mean, and I can see that. And you do have to bring up, like, one of the times they go back is to actually save the dragon guardian protectors, that protect and look over that place. Now, I will say, right, like, the predator dragons that seem to prey on the dead or dying dragons, potentially, them going after those dragons, them scaring away those dragons, that could be perceived as interfering with nature. Because is that the natural order of things? Like, the show doesn't necessarily go into a bunch of detail, like we don't need the finer points of it, but if those dragons are meant to prey on dead or dying dragons, then that's what they're meant to do. Like, you running them off is interfering with nature in its own way.
Yeah, that brings up the final thing I'm going to ask you, and this is something I just thought of. Would you say that Dragon Eye interferes with nature?
On its own, no, because it could be used as a way to study. Because you could look at it as an attempt to study the dragons and learn about the different dragon species and what they are, what they're capable of, what they're not capable of, different strengths and weaknesses. Like at that way, you could look at it in in a similar way to scientists studying different animals, as long as they're studying them in a non-invasive way. Like, and I know some people will have different opinions on that as well, right? Because very, you know, gray area, I suppose you could say. But again, as long as it's, in my opinion, being studied in a non-invasive way, you could say the dragon eye by itself isn't necessarily, right, a thing that interferes with nature. I would say it's how you use the dragon eye. And say, for the dragon hunters, they created the dragon eye, and I guess, in a way they learned all about these different dragons from hunting them and selling them and doing everything they did with them. So that's how they know about all of this. But I would say, like, for their purposes, the dragon eye definitely interferes with nature. But say in the hands of someone who just uses it to learn and study about dragons, then no, it's not interfering with nature at all. And yes, Hiccup using it does interfere with nature, considering how they use it from time to time. Even if they are using it for good, it's still necessarily them. It's still more or less them interfering with nature. It might be better than what the hunters are doing.
I think that, like you said, the device on its own is not necessarily made for this, but the way they use it in the show, either let it be Hiccup and the Riders,
its intended purpose was made for that. That's what it was made for, was to aid the hunters in their interfering with nature, right? But its intended purpose could be more than that. Like it is a tool, but it's not necessarily a tool that can. It's a tool that technically was made to do evil things, but can be used for good things, or at least to teach people and help people learn and grow and understand the dragons more.
Yeah,
and that can be a good thing, potentially. That can also potentially be a bad thing. It depends on,
like with everything, you can use it for what purposes, because we see how Hiccup and the Riders use it for good intentions, while the hunters use it for bad intentions. So in a sense, so like you said, and the way it was made to probably serve a way to interfere with nature, but in general, it could also, it depends how you use it. Yeah. Not that it matters now, because both dragon eyes are gone and no more.
But we still have the Book of Dragons, so that kind of fills the same role in a way.
Yeah, but in the Book of Dragon, at the same time, would you say that animal guides are interfering with nature?
Oh, sure, yeah, that's my point, right? Like, the study of the dragons, right? If you studied those dragons, and then you have to get into, like, how the dragons were studied, right? And Bork the Bold, right? Like, that's another great example. Like, was his, I guess you'd say, quote-unquote, study of dragons invasive in some way? If it was invasive, then technically, yeah, he was interfering with nature, but if he studied the dragons through a non-invasive way, then no, it's not interfering with nature. But looking at the short, probably was some interference with nature there, considering how he studied dragons, I suppose, considering he was very hands-on. Even if it wasn't by choice hands-on, he was still technically, quote-unquote, hands-on. So
yeah, he wasn't really taking precautions.
Yeah. Again, not necessarily by choice. I get that. Not necessarily his fault, but is what it is.
It's still.
But again, that's why it's not necessarily all black and white, I guess you could say.
Yeah, agreed. Anything else we can talk about in this, because we covered.
You cut out
mostly everything. Do you think we have anything else to cover? I think we covered pretty much everything.
I could mention I played a little bit of it, right? But I never got heavily into it, so it would require, talking to someone who's way more involved in it. But School of Dragons, the video game that they came out with, I think does a little bit with, nature and the dragons and interfering and not interfering and stuff like that. But I don't know how much and like what it goes to and what it goes into. But I think that game does do a bit with this idea. So good on them, I guess. A shout out to that game, I suppose.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so if that's everything, that's been all for this episode. We hope you enjoyed. Okay, quick one. Go.
No, I mean like a quick episode, I suppose you could say. Somewhat for us.
Okay. Yeah, okay, but this was all for this episode of the Berkcast. We hope you enjoyed. What do you think about interfering with nature in the How to Train Your Dragon universe? What would you count as interference? What would you count as not interfering? And would you say is interfering or not interfering good or bad in some cases? Whatever your thoughts are, you can tell us all about them in the comment section below, on our Tumblr, where we are known as Berkcast Team, on our Twitter, where we're Berkcast with a capital B, capital C, and you can find all of us in the How to Train Your Dragon Valhalla Discord server. So until next time, I was HC.
And I've been Wolf.
And we will talk to you all next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.